Okay, good morning. We're going to be making an apple pie this morning, and I'm going to try to show you step by step what I do, and I guess we'll get started. First of all, let's take a look at the ingredients. Okay, so pastry is real simple, nothing much to it. Flour, unsalted European butter, and some water. And for the filling, we have apples. I've got three different kinds here. Braeburns, which are crisp but not terribly juicy, which is good. Pink Ladies. I've got three or four of each of these. Pink Ladies add a nice bit of crispness to it. And a new apple that I'll probably add just one to. It's called a Sugar Bee, and it's very sweet, apparently. Never tried it before. And then with all of that, I use brown. And I add a quarter cup of minute tapioca to the apple mix to absorb any juices. My flour recipe is based on 8 ounces of flour to 5 ounces of butter. But because I'm using a deep dish pie dish, I want to make sure I've got plenty of pastry dough. So I upscale the recipe to 8 ounces of butter, which equates to about 13.5 ounces of flour. So I'm going to measure that out here. I've got my bowl, a sieve, which So there's my butter cut into just into chunks. First of all, though, I'm going to add a little salt, about that much. Tip in the butter. Now we knead the butter into the flour until it resembles breadcrumbs. Okay, so now the mixture resembles breadcrumbs. There's no sort of rule about this, but I like to do it until you can't see any white flour remaining. It's all gone this yellow color, and there aren't any large lumps of butter that are not incorporated. So now it's ready for the water. We want to add just enough to make the dough hold together. You can always add more water, but of course you can't take water out. But it doesn't matter too terribly much, I've found, if you end up with the dough that's kind of wet, but better not. We just want to gather the dough together until it just wants to form a lump. And I think I've got enough moisture in there now to get it all gathered together. I'm going to scrape some off my fingers using the back of my knife. So then what we're going to do is we're going to divide this into two pieces of pastry dough and refrigerate them for a little while. Basically for as long as it takes me to peel and slice the apples. Okay, so now I have two pieces of pastry dough wrapped in film. One slightly bigger than the other. The larger one will be the bottom. Pie crust. The smaller one will be the top pie crust. And those can go in the fridge now to have a nice rest. Okay, ready to do the apples now. So I have a small thin-bladed knife, which I like to use to peel. I've got my Braeburns. I've got those new Sugar Bee apples. And I've got a couple of Pink Ladies. Now, for every apple, I like to add about a tablespoon of sugar. I'm gonna prime the pump, so to speak, with a couple of tablespoons of sugar. And now we'll begin the tedious process of slicing the apples. That little 3-inch knife wasn't quite big enough, so I'm gonna cut it in half and so on with my 4-inch knife. And actually peel it with the 3-inch knife. at the same time, I've already turned the oven on to preheat it to 400 degrees because by the time I put the pie in the oven, I don't want it to be fluctuating for the temperature. I like the oven to be nice and stable. And even though this is a new oven and I think it is pretty stable anyway, you know, you just never know. So so I've quartered the apple. Now slicing it into my big bowl. So slices are relatively thin. You end up with some chunks like that. It's okay, doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's the first apple done. And we add a bunch of sugar on the top of that. And then we do the rest. So I'll meet you back here when I'm done. Okay, this is the last quarter of apple. So I've ended up with, three Pink Ladies, 2 Sugar Bees, and 2 Braeburns. And that's the last bit of that. And so I'll add a little extra. The Pink Ladies and the Sugar Bees were quite crisp and possibly quite juicy. So I'll add a full measure, a quarter cup of the tapioca. Okay, there's the tapioca. And that will absorb any moisture. So there's the apples. We're going to just mix that up. Coating the apples in sugar and the tapioca like this also prevents them from browning. Okay, so there's the mixture, and we're going to set that aside, and now we're going to roll out the dough. Okay, before we roll out the dough, here is my Emile Henry pie dish. Had this going on 25 years now. And so I've got the larger of my 2 pieces of pastry dough. I've cleaned off my surface here, floured it, got my rolling pin, which I've floured up, and some flour on there. And so now we're going to roll out the dough. All right, so there it is. Now we've got to put it in the pie dish. And just drape it like that. That looked like it worked quite nicely. This is probably didn't need to roll it out quite as much as I have. Oh well. What we want to do now is cut, and I'm going to use scissors for this. I want to trim the pastry so I've got about 1 inch overhang around the pie dish. Maybe I'm not doing it quite right. Not very evenly. That's okay. There, that'll do. So we end up with a little bit extra. Don't tell Michelle. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to put some foil in there and then fill it with. So here's my foil. Fold it over here. I'm actually going to use a couple of extra bits of foil here and here because I don't want the pastry exposed to the heat because it'll brown too much. Spread them out a bit, and that's going in the oven for about 15 minutes. Here's one I prepared earlier. So take the pie weights out, and you can see it's not cooked or anything. It's just partially cooked. So we're going to fill that with apples in a minute. But first, we're going to roll out the top crust, and then everything comes together. So here's my top crust, which we're going to roll out, and then we're going to assemble the pie. Why does it come out such an odd shape? Anyway, I think that'll do it. I know. How about I do this? there's the pie crust. We're gonna scoop the apples in there. So we're gonna mix these up again. So spooning the apples into that pie crust. And as it turned out, we used them all. Now this okay, now what we do is we want to seal the two edges of the pastry together. So I have an egg wash that I made a few minutes ago. Spread that around okay. And now we're gonna lay the pie crust over there. Oof. Barely big enough. And just tamp it down like that. There we go. Now we're gonna trim it off. And of course the pie is still quite hot. There we go. Pull that aside. Plop that back down. I'm gonna make a little pattern all around the edge. I'm gonna make a couple of little vents for steam. Somebody apparently likes it if there's a smiley face on the pie. There. And then with the rest of this, or some of the rest of this egg wash, we're gonna brush that over the top crust. Okay, so that's ready to go in the oven now. There it is. Just put it on the top rack, close that baby up, and we're ready to go. So I've got about 45 minutes now until it needs to come out. Okay, so I think we're about ready. Let's take a look at the pie. So it's a nice golden brown color. I think the crust is about done. So that's ready to come out of the oven. And there we are. One apple pie with a smiley face. And that's all there is to it.